All right, everyone. I'm excited to announce that there is a wasp nest in the ground out and back, and thankfully, I know where there are red ants, so we're going to have a melee later. It's going to be pitched battle. Anyway, Trump pushes to end mail ballots in elections. He has stated that he wants to put an end to mail-in ballots, generally speaking. Of course, absentee ballots for someone who's deployed in diplomacy, someone who is overseas for some business purpose, those should be issued. That makes sense. But in general, people should be voting in person. I don't have a problem with early voting. That makes no difference because it's still in-person voting. But the problem is that mail-in ballots come with an increased risk of fraud. Now, Trump is wrong when he says the United States is the only country that uses mail-in ballots, but generally speaking, it is limited. It is limited to absentee ballots and things like that. Hell, some countries, they don't have in-person voting at all. The voting system differs from country to country. Of course, if you're in North Korea, your ballot just says, check box for Kim Jong-un. No, it's a democratic socialism at its finest. Things like that. I do agree, though, that mail-in ballot access, having been rapidly expanded under the auspices of the authoritarianism of lockdownism, it should be done away with. Should not exist. There's no reason for it. We don't have any lockdowns anymore, and there's no reason to ever have them again, by the way, so those should be done away with. With regards to uh, ballot box electronic voting. I also agree with Donald Trump. This one I agree with even more on. With more with regards to mail-in ballots, of course, there are still some circumstances under which that is proper. It's just you should have to apply for it, make sure that you know that the person is actually eligible to vote and so forth. There should be a process involved, but it is a process that does have to exist. With electronic voting, though, for the in-person side, it does not need to exist at all. Can I please ask a totally rhetorical question? I hate using that term. Is there a reason why people in some states can vote in person on paper ballots and everything gets counted up within a few hours, and other states take days and days to tabulate things via electronic voting, etc.? I think there might be a correlation here. Here in Vermont, for example, it's paper ballot only. We do not have electronic voting. The only electronic thing that occurs within the voting process is feeding it into a container, basically. And then it says, ding, you voted, ta-da, you're done. Go away, bye. That's the only thing that happens. And by the way, my voting place is like a block from here, so it's pretty easy. I can understand why sometimes you're going to have hitches in the voting system. There are going to be occasions where you have delays, maybe there's inclement weather, a hurricane sweeping through. It might take us a little bit longer. That's understandable. But you should be using paper ballot only. You can put them through the electronic feeder to tabulate the number of votes, and they go into a container, and then the container is withdrawn and other ones put in, and then they are counted, but they're hand counted. And that's what we really, really need to do. We do not need a bunch of mail-in ballots fudging the system. The problem is that you can end up with somebody attempting to print out fraudulent ballots, and this has happened, and or requisitioning ballots from third parties, and then feeding them into the system, and in elections that can be very close. So this is not going to be the case for California, which is going to be like 10 million plus for the blue side, or Wyoming, 100,000 plus for the Republicans or something. It's not going to happen there. But in competitive states, you get the problem whereby a very small number of votes, only a few thousand in some cases, can literally swing an entire presidential election. For example, Joe Biden I mean, he was elected by only a few 100,000 votes across a handful of states. It was razor thin. Well, it's not that difficult to rig an election when the margins are that thin under our current electoral system. It's not difficult to do, actually. A concerted effort by, well, a few hundred individuals, and that's not exactly a posse, could easily flip an election thereby. All they have to do is know where it's going to be close and then target those locations accordingly. And we've seen this. There are fraudulent ballots. In some cases, by the way, they've been in favor of Republicans. I noticed that the liberal side of the legacy media is very, very fond of pointing this out. Well, we found 18 ballots that were fraudulent here in Ohio. Okay, yeah, that's wonderful. Now report on the other news, like the fact that there were 18,000 fraudulent votes in Nevada or something like that, because that is what is happening. If anything, here's what worries me, and hopefully most of you understand exactly why. What I'm worried about is actually effectively overlapped with the current argument over gerrymandering or gerrymandering. By the way, both spellings are actually proper in colloquial usage. I had someone try to call me out the other day, and I'm like, no, both of them come out correct on word processors for a reason. Um, what I'm worried about is much like with that. Texas redraws its districts. It is politically partisan. Let's just fucking admit it. California decides to respond by doing the same, right? Well, what if one side of the political aisle decides to commit, significant organized voter fraud, namely the Democrats? My worry is that the Republicans are going to stoop to the same level and it will effectively ruin our elections forever. It'll be a never-ending battle about who can be more fraudulent. And this is what worries me. Now, the Democrats definitely let the genie out of the bottle on this one. Whereas the Republican, well, technically they did with gerrymandering too, with Chicago and a few other locations, but get past that for now because it's not an issue. Trump is correct to try to prevent mail-in ballots from generally being used. Absentee ballot, again, for a soldier, someone deployed overseas, they can't appear in person. It's impossible for them to do so. Somebody who's got some terrible illness who can't even get out of bed, I can understand why they would have a ballot. They're still allowed to vote. But generally speaking, most people, like I'm not going to mail in a fucking ballot. I had to when I was, in the Netherlands, but other than that, yeah, I have never done that. I've always voted in person. I know nobody that I know of has ever used a mail-in ballot other than myself. I certainly didn't vote fraudulently. I'm eligible to vote in the United States. But I think that a large proportion of the people using mail-in ballots don't need to use them. And in some cases, states and state courts as well are trying to cock block any sort of oversight as to how the system is used. Well, that's a little bit of a problem now, isn't it? I would say that it's, well, more than a little bit of a problem in my own personal opinion. Keep it to absentee, in person generally only, no electronic voting because those systems are so fried and hackable, actually, that they should never be used. There should be no electronic voting. If a state like New York is capable of getting in its votes within a couple of hours, then certainly Arizona should probably be capable of doing so. Apparently, certain states' populations are just too retarded to be able to get votes in a timely fashion. I have a feeling it would be better if it was paper only. That's about all. Peace out.